Tuesday morning. Here we are again. The morning after another brutal New York football performance. I feel like we have done this 10 million times since this show started back in 2018. The Giants, the Jets, and the Jets gave you a little bit of something on Sunday night. I'm not talking about just recent memory, but just the entire time since I've been doing this show. We have had so many of these days. And Spike Eskin, who's been here for, last couple of years, walks in and goes, oh, man. He's like, yeah, that was a rough one last night. I was like, come on. This is our comfort zone. Seeing the Giants get their face kicked in, Daniel Jones looking terrible, everybody screaming about the offensive line, and the season being over in October is like the warm blanket that comes out of the dryer, and you wrap yourself in and get in on the couch. That's all we know. This is our home. This is where we live. We can't see anything nice in New York football. We're not capable of it. I don't remember the last time. I mean, they went in, they beat the Vikings in the playoffs, and they got killed by the Philadelphia Eagles, and they haven't been the same team since. Got their asses kicked by the Eagles. They got their asses kicked by the Cowboys. They got their asses kicked by the 49ers. They almost got their asses kicked by the Cardinals, and last night they got their asses kicked again. Good morning, Boomer. How are you?
Yeah, good morning, G. I'm like you, man. I'm just annoyed. I'm frustrated, and I feel bad for a lot of people that really don't deserve to go through stuff like this. And, quite frankly, we could sit here all damn day and talk about this offensive line and talk about the sacks, and I'm sure Al would be more than happy to take your calls about the offensive line. I'm just going to tell you something. Troy Aikman said something on this broadcast last night that made me sit up and go, what? And what he said was that he was talking to Brian Daboll, or they were talking to Brian Daboll, as most broadcasters do before the game, to kind of get a little flavor of the team and what's going on. A little background stuff. Yeah. How's this guy doing? How's that guy playing? Why isn't he getting any sacks? Why doesn't he have a touchdown pass? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And Brian Daboll said to Troy Aikman, and I think I heard this right, and I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth.
Well, you better have heard it right.
I believe I heard it right, but it just kind of shocked me. They were talking about Daniel Jones, and Brian Daboll says, look, I'm always up. I'm always into it. I'm always geeked, essentially like that. I have the energy. I just have to get him going. And I'm like, wait a minute, time out. Did the head coach of the football team just say that he has to get his quarterback going, that they're paying $41 million a year to? I mean, I know that Daniel Jones had a great year last year for all intents and purposes for himself. You can't compare him to anybody else because the numbers weren't there. I know that he was under some duress last night, but you could see the frustration. When Daboll goes over and talks to him, shows him the tablet, throws the tablet down, and then you also have the other fumble that ends up leading to another touchdown because he's running with the ball, he's not throwing the ball. All I know is that the quarterback has got to be the engine. He's got to be the guy that drives the football team. And when you give a guy $41 million a year, you can't have a guy back there that is afraid to throw the ball or is hesitant in any way, shape, or form. I think that Brian Daboll probably got here last year, and now, because he's been around Josh Allen for so long up there in Buffalo, he's going to compare every quarterback he ever has to what Josh Allen was when he had him. And what he had in Josh Allen was a kid that was fearless on the football field, to the point he was reckless, and he would turn the ball over, and he'd try to jump over people. And he was so into the game, so intense, and he was the engine and still is the engine that runs the Buffalo Bills. And his last 3 games, what you see in Josh Allen is a guy that's playing at an MVP level at the quarterback position. Where they made a major mistake here is that they thought that somehow, some way, Daniel Jones was going to turn into what Josh Allen is up in Buffalo. Same physical stature, same athleticism, but he's a different human being, and he's a different person, and he doesn't even possess remotely the characteristics that a Josh Allen has, that he has right now. And that Josh Allen is fearless when he goes on a football field, and he's the heartbeat of that football team. Daniel Jones is like walking around, and I'm like, come on. And I hate to say it, I played the position. I know when a quarterback is kind of disconnected, not playing well, and it affects everybody. And we've been talking about this for God knows how long with the Jets.
Yeah, and I don't know what would have happened if Daniel Jones didn't play the way he did in that wild card game up in Minnesota, but that was it. That was the best game of his life. It was a playoff game where they were a slight underdog. They had lost up there in the regular season, and he came in and looked like a superstar quarterback on a national stage in the playoffs. Now, if he had played like he did last night in that game, which it was impossible to. That Vikings defense was one of the worst in the league. I think statistically they ended up worst in the league. But if he had played like he did last night, there's no way he's getting that contract. I don't even know if he's a New York Giant. So, I mean, now you're thinking about, and at that point, I was like, hey, he earned his money. He's going to get a contract. I didn't think $40 million. We were talking maybe low 30s. But I just wonder, I mean, was that one game the reason why the New York Giants are paying this guy like a top 5 quarterback?
No. In 3 games this year, the Giants have scored, I think, 15 points?
Because ever since that game, they had
the 28 points in the second half of the Cardinals, and other than that, it's been 15 points.
I mean, and then go back to the playoff game against Philadelphia, too.
Yeah, Philadelphia was a great team, and we kind of knew that he would have to be Superman in order for them to win, and that was going to be impossible.
But the point is that almost every game that they have played since that Viking playoff game where Daniel Jones looked great, they have got their face kicked in. I mean, essentially. I mean, and they were getting killed in Arizona, and they came back, miraculous comeback. He looked awesome, but every other game, it's been essentially non-competitive.
The problem is 64 points given up at home and only 3 points scored. And quite frankly, the defense didn't play all that bad last night.
They still have problems tackling.
They missed tackles. I know. I'm not saying that they didn't. I'm just saying that, you gave up basically 2 turnovers turned into touchdowns. One was obviously the interception return. The other one was the fumble. That was the short field for the Seahawks. And I'm just telling you, it is mind-boggling to me. It is mind-boggling to me that your head coach has to say to a broadcaster, I'm the energy. I got to try to get this guy up all the time. And I'm like, you're an NFL quarterback, man. You got to show up. You got to look.
We knew that about him.
I know.
I mean, is that some sort of surprise? I mean, every time we see this is all we said after every interview we had with him at camp is that he kind of wish he had a little more juice. I mean, his personality's been the same since the second we walked in here. He walked in here, and we've said it. So, I mean, you can't be surprised now all of a sudden that Daniel Jones is a flatliner. We've been talking about that since he was drafted.
And the thing is, I'm not saying that he's not trying hard. I'm not saying that he's doing what he is, or he's playing the way he is, the human being that he is. What separates these players is who they are as people. What kind of pressure, what kind of intensity do they want to play with? How many times have we seen Tom Brady on the sideline when he was playing take his helmet and smash it on the ground? How many times we see him take a tablet and smash it on the ground? How many times we see him in the face of a coach or a teammate and try to ramp up his own aggressiveness so he can get back into the game mentally?
Yeah.
You're not going to always play your perfect game. Last night was a typical kind of like Daniel Jones, Midland, no spirit, no fight, no type of leadership game. And turnovers that led to 14 points for the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of that throughout his career. This is why I was so down on him, but I've also seen greatness, and it's confusing. I mean, say what you want about Arizona. They've been tough this year. That second half, I mean, we said it. You said it. He turned into Superman in that second half. He was phenomenal. So it's in there, but Brian Daboll is livid with not only that personality, but the decision-making in year 2 when he should be 10 times better. I mean, Brian Daboll didn't throw that tablet down saying, the left tackle didn't block somebody. He threw that tablet down because he made a terrible read and threw a pick 6. So, I mean, and that's what's the most alarming thing to me is the fact that that Brian Daboll's a good coach. He won Coach of the Year. He got the most out of that team last year. You come back in the second year with the same coordinator and the same head coach, and he's regressed after getting a contract?
And supposedly you added even more, wide receivers and playmakers. Of course, Saquon Barkley's not on the field, of course. So that obviously is going to have a profound effect on the New York Giants and their offense. I don't know what else to tell you, but it's just such a lackluster think about it. He completed 27 of 34 passes, and he got sacked 10 times.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. I mean, it's unbelievable. And they couldn't convert a tush push. Mm-hmm. And he's a 6'5" quarterback.
Yeah, I mean that was pathetic. I mean, that really set the tone for the night. I mean, I know they got basically stomped after that, but they were moving the football. They had all the momentum. I was like, oh man, they look fresh coming off that long layoff from Thursday night. They're going to go down and score a touchdown, and then they got stopped in their tracks. And the game was sort of slow after that, but
slow.
that was
it came to like a stop.
Yeah, no, it was not fun. It was not a fun watch.
I mean, even at late in the game last night, they go to Troy and Joe in the booth. He goes, "Welcome to the booth. We're still here."
Yeah.
And then Troy said something funny like, "I wonder if our viewers are still here."
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, they were also outwardly mocking the Giants getting sacked so much. It was like, "Oh, look, another one happened. Oh, look at that. Who's going to take? Who's this one? Oh, it's this guy. Welcome to the party." Just basically mocking the way that the Giants were playing football because of the 11 sacks last night.
How about so Daniel Jones now is 0-7 on Monday Night Football. Joe Namath is 0-6 on Monday Night Football. Did you know that?
Well, hopefully he gets a shot again to get out there and try to rectify that.
I didn't realize that Joe Namath was 0-6 on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, well, whatever. He had his moment.
Whatever. But again, it goes back to the whole primetime game thing.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about this yesterday. It becomes a thing. It does. And, there are reasons why. I mean, when you're a middle-of-the-road quarterback like Kirk Cousins had been for a long time, and now he's someone who's stepping forward and having these ridiculous stats, even though they're losing football games, you usually run into better teams on these primetime games, and that's when your true colors come out if you're a middle-of-the-road quarterback.
You're playing in these primetime games because you're supposed to be a good team yourself.
No, I agree, but this is what happens. I mean, you're not. You're slightly above average. You're on a team like the New York Giants. You made the playoffs last year, got your ass kicked in the second round. They throw you on a primetime game, and you're just not good enough.
I want to reiterate one more time. I can see it just like everybody else can see it. You don't have to play the position to understand it. You're a fan. You have your points of view. You see it all. But when I heard Troy Aikman say that Brian Daboll told him that, I'm always up. I just got to get this kid up. I'm like, wow. I mean, that tells me of the frustrations behind the scenes. And Troy went public with it, so I get it. I understand that, once you're sitting there with those coaches and they say what they say, everything's, open for discussion on one of these broadcasts, unless I say, look, I don't really want to get into it off the record, but that didn't seem to be the case to me.
No, I agree, and that is a huge indictment on Daniel Jones coming from his head coach, and you hate to hear that. But the only thing I question is you knew exactly who this guy was when you gave him the contract. He has not changed one bit. This is one thing that we said at training camp. It was like, hey, before the money, after the money, his personality, when he had pressure on him, when he doesn't have pressure, he's been the same guy. So it's not like all of a sudden you're like, oh, man, like I can't rev the engines on Daniel Jones. He's been a flatliner forever. So that's the thing that's surprising to me. So if you didn't think that he had it, if you didn't think he was going to be that great leader, he wasn't going to be a top 5 quarterback because you're paying him like one, then you never should have.
Well, that goes back to ownership, too. The ownership has got to say, yeah, you know what? He played great in that Minnesota playoff game. He deserves the money. We don't really have an alternative. We don't know, if there's somebody else out there that we think is going to be good. And I think, they felt like he played well. And it's like a poor man's Josh Allen. Same size, same athleticism, great guy, great, person in the locker room, stand-up guys, never going to be late, always going to be working hard, always going to say the right things. That's Giant football. That's what they see in the franchise. That's what they want as their quarterback. And, Eli, set the tone for that. I guess you can go back to Phil Simms, too. You can go to Phil and then Eli and now Daniel Jones. It's like the same type of guy, a really solid guy. A guy's going to work his ass off, and a guy's going to lead the team. The difference is that when Eli had the moments he had, he came through. The same thing with Phil. When he had his moments, he came through. And quite frankly, Phil had, let's say it, Phil had Bill Parcells and Lawrence Taylor. He had a great defense, and he had a great head coach. And that head coach takes a lot of pressure off of the quarterback. And I think that Brian Daboll, his coaching resume speaks for itself, and his success as an offensive coach speaks for itself. Now, all of a sudden, he's got this frustrating kid that he likes and he really appreciates, but can't get more out of him, can't get more leadership, can't get more. I can't explain it to you other than.
No, I mean, I understand exactly what you're saying.
You saw what Aaron Rodgers did to the Jets when he got here.
No, of course. And
that's right. Damn straight, man. That was me.
No, yes, we know.
Damn straight I do. I need your guys' concentration too, you idiots.
We're concentrating. But the thing I just keep going back to is this isn't a surprise of who Daniel Jones is. You're like, now Brian Daboll's frustrated because he's got this flatlining kid who doesn't have energy. You gave him $40 million a year. I mean, he wasn't bouncing around like Phillip Rivers last year and then all of a sudden came in like a zombie. Yep. This guy's been a wet noodle since the second he got here. And he played well enough to earn himself a contract. Now we can't all of a sudden be like, oh, my God, I can't believe this is Daniel Jones we have here.
Well, the problem is you have 2 turnovers that were directly attributed to him that ended up in 14 points.
Right.
And the Giants didn't get any turnovers on defense. This is how these games get lopsided like this.
Yeah.
And, quite frankly, I mean, they can't score and they're not getting turnovers. You combine those two things, you have a disaster in the making.
Like 1 and 5 is staring them in the face.
Well, yeah, because now they got Miami and Buffalo next.
Yep.
And they got to go to Miami, they got to go to Buffalo, and then they have Washington, and then that big showdown with the Jets.
Oh, yeah, big showdown.
Ooh.
Draft position showdown. That's going to be a draft spot. Nobody's going to care at that point. Both teams out of it.
I mean, if you really want to tank, now's the time to do it.
No, I agree. No, let's just full bore, straight to the bottom of the ocean. Let's go. Let's tie the concrete to our ankles and just sink. Boomer and Gio on the Fan and CBS Sports Network.
Jesus.
Get Jerry in here.
One of these long freaking days.
I know. It's just so annoying. But like I said, this is what we're used to.